Hey guys, tonight we are stepping out of the bright, sunlit world of familiar Olympian gods and into the much quieter, more mysterious realm of the ancient Greek night. We're going to accompany a rather enigmatic and often misunderstood goddess Hecate as she undertakes her gentle, vital, and largely unseen nightly duties, particularly at those liminal, power-filled spaces known as the Crossroads. Imagine yourself standing at a lonely three-way intersection as dusk settles over the Grecian countryside, the air cooling, the shadows lengthening. The world of mortals is quieting down, but another world, Hecate's world, is just beginning to awaken. This isn't about dramatic battles or Olympian soap operas. This is about the subtle magic of thresholds, the quiet guidance of lost souls, and the serene guardianship of the night. And honestly, if you found yourself alone at an unlit ancient Greek crossroads after dark, with only the sound of crickets and the distant howl of a dog, you probably wouldn't survive the sheer spooky anticipation without at least a very sturdy torch and a firm belief that not everything that goes bump in the night is out to get you, especially if Hecate is on duty. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, maybe drop a comment to let us know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always a deep pleasure to know our community of history lovers and gentle dreamers is gathered. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The last rays of the sun have painted the western sky in hues of bruised purple and soft rose, and a profound stillness begins to settle over the olive groves and dusty paths of ancient Greece. This is the hour of transition, the threshold between day and night, a time when the veil between worlds is said to grow thin. And it is in these liminal moments, as the first stars prick the darkening sky, that the goddess Hecate begins her quiet reign. You find yourself standing at a trivium, a three-way crossroads, a place inherently sacred to her. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wild thyme and damp earth. There are no streetlights here, no bustling traffic, only the deepening shadows and the ancient stones of the road beneath your feet. Hecate, often depicted in later times with three forms facing in different directions to survey all paths, or as a single figure holding twin torches, is a goddess of immense antiquity and complexity. She's not one of the boisterous, often petulant Olympians who dwell in sunlit splendor atop Mount Olympus. Her domain is more nuanced, more mysterious. The boundaries, the gateways, the in-between spaces, and the quiet, often unseen workings of magic spirits and the nocturnal world. Her duties are not performed with fanfare or dramatic pronouncements, but with a gentle, watchful presence ensuring the safe passage of the night and offering guidance to those who navigate its shadows, both literal and metaphorical. Tonight, we're not focusing on the later, sometimes more sensationalized aspects of Hecate as a queen of witches or terrifying figure of dark sorcery, though magic is indeed one of her domains. Instead, we're seeking the quieter, perhaps more ancient understanding of her role as a guardian, a guide and a benevolent, if somewhat awe-inspiring presence in the lives of ordinary ancient Greeks. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate was an ancient chthonic, underworld-related goddess in Greek religion and mythology, widely worshipped by households and individuals as a protective deity, who bestowed blessings, averted evil, and held sway over magic crossroads, entrances, light, and the night. Her worship was widespread and deeply ingrained in everyday Greek life. As you stand at this lonely crossroads, waiting for the moon to rise, you might feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sense of unseen presences, a quiet hum of ancient power. This is Hecate's time. The sounds of the day, the shepherd's pipe, the blacksmith's hammer, the marketplace chatter have faded. Now you hear the chirp of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, perhaps the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. And in this profound quiet, Hecate begins her work, her duties often performed far from the notice of most sleeping mortals. Historians still argue about Hecate's precise origins, whether she was an indigenous Greek goddess whose worship predated the arrival of the Olympians, or if her cult was imported from Anatolia or Thrace areas with which she has strong ancient connections. Her parentage in the myths is also varied, though she is often named as the daughter of the Titans, Perses, and Asteria, making her a cousin to Apollo and Artemis and a deity of considerable power, respected even by Zeus himself. This ancient lineage sets her apart, giving her a unique status afoot in the old pre-Olympian world as well as the new. So let the sounds of your own world recede. Allow the darkness to be a comforting blanket, not a source of fear. And prepare to walk the moonlit paths with Hecate, the gentle guardian of the night's quiet mysteries, as she performs her ancient sacred duties at the crossroads of the world. You are now standing in the deepening twilight at that ancient Greek crossroads, the air growing cool and fragrant with the scents of the night-blooming herbs that Hecate herself might favor. You're beginning to sense the unique aura of this often misunderstood goddess, a presence more ancient and perhaps more nuanced than many of the more boisterous Olympians. To truly appreciate the quiet dignity of Hecate's knightly duties, we need to delve a little into her impressive and rather distinct lineage. She wasn't just a minor spirit of the dark. Hecate was a Titan's daughter, a goddess whose power and honors were acknowledged and respected even by Zeus, the mighty king of the gods, a rare distinction indeed for a deity not always counted among the core Olympian 12. Unlike many of the gods and goddesses who were direct offspring of Cronus and Rhea, or children of Zeus himself, Hecate's origins stretch back to an earlier, more primordial generation of deities, the Titans. Most commonly, as the poet Hesiod tells us in his Theogony, one of our earliest and most important sources for Greek creation myths and genealogies, Hecate was the only child of the Titan Perses, a god of destruction, and the Titaness Asteria, goddess of falling stars, and perhaps nocturnal prophecy, and sister to Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. This parentage alone marks her as a figure of significant ancient power predating or existing alongside the rise of the Olympian order. This is a mainstream historical fact. According to Hesiod's Theogony, Hecate was the daughter of the Titans, Perses and Asteria, and she was uniquely honored by Zeus above all other deities, retaining her ancient powers and domains over earth, sea, and sky, even after the Titanomachy, the great war between the Titans and Olympians. This respect from Zeus is a crucial aspect of Hecate's character and authority. Hesiod makes a special point of emphasizing that Zeus did not strip Hecate of the powers and honors she held under the Titans. In fact, he added to them. She was granted a share of dominion in all three realms, the earth, the starry heavens, and the unlit sea. Furthermore, Zeus honored her by making her a bestower of riches and blessings upon mortals who worshipped her with piety. She could grant victory in battle and in game success, to fishermen and herdsmen, and wisdom to those in judgment or assembly. This broad spectrum of positive attributes, this power to grant good fortune across so many areas of human endeavor, is often overlooked in later portrayals that focus solely on her association with witchcraft or the underworld. It's like remembering a very versatile and respected CEO only for that one slightly eccentric office party they threw in the 90s. There was much more to her than just spooky stuff. This unique position straddling the old Titan regime and the new Olympian order, and retaining the favor of Zeus, gave Hecate a certain independence and a wide-ranging, if sometimes subtly exercised, influence. She wasn't confined to a single, narrowly defined role like some other deities. Her power was more diffuse, more liminal, operating at the boundaries and in the transitional spaces, a perfect fit for a goddess of Crossroads gates and the mysterious passage of night. There's a quirky little tidbit concerning Hecate's name and its possible etymologies. While often linked to the Greek word hekos, meaning far off or far darter, perhaps relating to her ability to influence events from a distance, or her association with far-reaching light. Like her torches, some scholars have also suggested connections to Egyptian goddesses like Hecate, a frog-headed deity of childbirth and fertility. While direct linguistic links are debated, it hints at the truly ancient and possibly syncretic roots of Hecate's worship, suggesting her attributes might have been a blend of various pre-Greek and Eastern Mediterranean divine figures associated with magic, childbirth, and the night. It's like her divine resume had some very impressive, very old international experience listed on it. The fact that Hecate was so respected by Zeus, even though she was of Titan heritage, and the Titans were by and large overthrown and imprisoned by Zeus and his Olympian siblings, is quite remarkable. It suggests that her power was either too ancient and profound to be easily dismissed, or that she perhaps remained neutral or even aided Zeus during the Titanomachy. Hesiod doesn't explicitly state this, but her continued honors imply a special status. She wasn't seen as a threat to Olympian rule, but rather as a complementary power, one who held sway over realms that even Zeus respected. Historians still argue about the precise evolution of Hecate's character, from her earliest attestations in texts like Hesiod's Theogony, where she is portrayed as a largely benevolent, all-purpose bestower of blessings, to her later more specialized and sometimes more chthonic, underworld-related and magic-focused roles in classical and Hellenistic Greek religion. Was this a narrowing of her functions or simply an emphasis on certain aspects that became more prominent? Over time, particularly her association with the night ghosts and witchcraft, it's a complex development, but her ancient Titan-born power and Zeus's profound respect for her remained foundational elements of her mythology. So, as you imagine Hecate beginning her nightly duties, remember that this is no minor spirit you're encountering. This is a goddess with a lineage stretching back to the dawn of the cosmos, a deity whose ancient privileges were confirmed by the king of the gods himself. Her quiet movements through the darkness, her gentle guardianship of the thresholds all stem from this deep inherent power, a power that is both ancient and ever-present in the liminal spaces of the Greek world. You're now aware of Hecate's venerable Titan-born lineage, a heritage that underpins her unique status and power, respected even by Zeus. This ancient authority isn't just for show, it directly informs her specific domains and duties. And one of her most crucial and widely recognized roles in the ancient Greek world was that of the keeper of thresholds and ways. Hecate was the goddess who presided over boundaries, over gates and doorways, over roads and pathways, and most especially over those mystical, power-laden points where three roads met. The trivium, or three-way crossroads. These weren't just geographical locations. They were liminal spaces, places of transition, decision, and potential encounter with the unseen. And Hecate was their solemn, watchful guardian. Imagine yourself as an ancient Greek traveler, perhaps journeying from one village to another, as dusk begins to fall. You approach a dusty, three-way crossroads. This isn't just a simple intersection. In the Greek mindset, it's a place imbued with a subtle, almost palpable spiritual energy. It's a point of choice of uncertainty where paths diverge and destinies might shift. And it is precisely here at such thresholds between one place and another, one state and another, that Hecate's presence was most keenly felt. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate was prominently worshipped in ancient Greece as a goddess of crossroads. Trivia in Latin. Enodia in Greek boundaries and entrances with her shrines or simple altars, often erected at city gates, private doorways, and particularly at three-way intersections where she was believed to avert evil and protect travelers. Her role as a guardian of these liminal spaces was multifaceted. Firstly, she was a protector. Crossroads and gateways, being points of entry and exit, were seen as vulnerable to apotropaic spirits, ghosts, or other unwelcome influences from the unseen world. Hecate, with her torches and her connection to both the earthly and chthonic realms, was believed to have the power to ward off such evils to keep the pathways safe for those who traveled them, especially at night. Small offerings might be left for her at these points, seeking her protection for a journey or for the household whose entrance she guarded. It was like having a divine neighborhood watch captain, but one who also dealt with significantly spookier potential intruders. Secondly, Hecate was a guide. Crossroads by their very nature represent a point of decision. Which path to take? What lies ahead for an ancient traveler, especially at night or in an unfamiliar land? Making the wrong choice could lead to danger or simply getting hopelessly lost. Hecate, often depicted holding her twin torches, was seen as the one who could illuminate the way both literally and metaphorically. She could offer guidance help, one see the correct path, or navigate through darkness and uncertainty. Travelers might offer a quiet prayer to her at a crossroads, asking for a safe journey and clear passage. She wasn't going to pop up with a GPS and say, "In 200 cubits turn left at the old olive tree," but her unseen presence was believed to offer a more subtle, intuitive form of direction. The three-way crossroads trivium held particular significance for Hecate, so much so that she was often depicted in triple form. Hecate Trevia or Hecate Triodia, with three bodies standing back to back, or three heads allowing her to look down all three paths simultaneously. This triple form emphasized her all-seeing vigilance, her ability to perceive what was coming and going in every direction, and her dominion over these points of profound transition. Statues or pillars called a Hecate were often erected at these three-way junctions, serving as shrines to her places where small offerings could be left. Imagine coming across one of these in the moonlight, a still, silent, three-faced goddess keeping her eternal watch over the converging paths. It would certainly make you think twice about which road you chose. There's a quirky little tidbit that some scholars suggest the offerings left at Hecate's Crossroads shrines weren't always just for her, but also for the restless spirits, the ghosts of the unburied, or those who died violently who were believed to congregate at these liminal places, often in Hecate's spectral retinue. By leaving food offerings, as we'll discuss more with Hecate's supper travelers or households, we're not just appeasing Hecate, but also pacifying these potentially troublesome spirits, ensuring they didn't follow anyone home. It was a bit like leaving out snacks to keep the neighborhood's stray ghostly cats from causing a nuisance under Hecate's understanding supervision. This role as keeper of thresholds extended beyond just physical roads and gateways. Hecate was also associated with other transitional moments or states in life: childbirth, the passage from non-being to being death, the passage to the underworld, and even the transitions of the moon from new to full and back again. Her presence was felt at any point where one state bordered another, where the veil was thin. Historians still argue about the precise origins of Hecate's strong association with the number 3 and the triple crossroads. Was it simply because a three-way junction is a common and potent symbol of choice? Or did it relate to her dominion over the three realms, earth, sky, sea, as mentioned by Hesiod, or perhaps to the three phases of the moon, waxing, full, waning, with which she also became linked? Her triple form could also represent her multifaceted nature, maiden mother, crone, past, present, future, or her ability to see in all directions. The symbolism is rich and open to many layers of interpretation. But for the ancient Greek person, as they stood at a doorway about to enter a home, or paused at a fork in the road, wondering which way to turn, the unseen but keenly felt presence of Hecate, the keeper of thresholds and ways, offered a sense of both awe and reassurance. She was the silent guardian of all such passages, her torches a promise of light in the darkness, her ancient power a shield against the unseen dangers that might lurk at the boundaries of their world. You are now standing at that ancient Greek crossroads, feeling the subtle yet potent presence of Hecate, the solemn guardian of all such liminal spaces, all thresholds and ways. Her dominion over these points of transition is well established in your mind. And one of her most iconic and consistently depicted attributes, the very tools with which she often performs her quiet nightly duties, are her twin torches. These are not just for show, not mere divine accessories. Hecate's torches are powerful symbols and practical instruments, illuminating the darkness, guiding lost souls, revealing hidden paths, and warding off the lesser evils that might lurk in the night's shadows. Imagine Hecate as she begins her nocturnal rounds, perhaps as the last sliver of the sun disappears and the world is plunged into true darkness, save for the distant, cold light of the stars and the rising moon. In her hands, or perhaps borne by spectral attendants, are two brightly burning torches. Their flickering light cuts through the gloom, casting long dancing shadows, creating a small mobile circle of illumination in the vast expanse of the night. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate is frequently depicted in ancient Greek art and literature holding one or two torches, symbolizing her role as a light bearer in the darkness, a guide for souls, psychopomp, and a goddess associated with the night magic and pathways. The most immediate and practical function of these torches is, of course, illumination. For an ancient Greek traveler caught out after dark on an unfamiliar road, or for someone navigating the unlit narrow alleyways of a city at night, any source of light would be a profound blessing. Hecate with her torches becomes the divine wayfinder, the one who can light up the path ahead, revealing obstacles, marking safe passages, and dispelling the disorienting power of absolute darkness. Her light wasn't necessarily the broad, revealing glare of Apollo's sun. It was a more focused, intimate, and sometimes mysterious illumination, perfectly suited to the nuances of the night. It was less stadium floodlight and more really good divinely powered flashlight that never runs out of batteries. But Hecate's torchlight often carried deeper symbolic meaning. It wasn't just about physical sight. It was also about insight, about revealing hidden truths or illuminating the correct course of action when one was at a metaphorical crossroads in life facing a difficult decision. Her light could pierce not just the physical gloom, but also the darkness of ignorance or indecision. A prayer to Hecate might be for guidance, for clarity, for her divine light to show the way forward. Furthermore, her torches linked her to her role as a psychopomp, a guide of souls, particularly in her association with the myth of Persephone's abduction by Hades. When Persephone was taken to the underworld, it was Hecate with her torches who heard Demeter's cries of anguish, and who eventually guided Demeter through the darkness in her search for her lost daughter. Later, Hecate often became Persephone's attendant and companion in the underworld, her torches lighting the way in that sunless realm. This role as a light bearer in the chthonic darkness made her a crucial figure in mysteries related to death and rebirth, a compassionate guide for souls navigating the ultimate threshold. She knew the paths between worlds, and her torches were the beacons. The light from Hecate's torches also had an apotropaic quality, the power to ward off evil. In the ancient Greek worldview, the night was often populated by lesser malevolent spirits, ghosts, or frightening supernatural entities, the kind Phobator might be sending into your dreams if you recall our earlier discussions on the Oneiroi. The pure sacred light of Hecate's torches was believed to repel these creatures of darkness, creating a safe, sanctified space around her and around those who sought her protection. Leaving a lamp burning at your doorway or carrying a torch at night could be seen as invoking Hecate's protective light, a small echo of her own divine flame. It's like having a divinely powered bug zapper, but for significantly more terrifying nocturnal nuisances. There's a quirky little tidbit that the type of wood used for Hecate's torches might have sometimes been specific, perhaps yew or pine woods, that had their own symbolic associations with the underworld, with resilience or with purification. The very smoke from her torches or the scent of the burning pitch might have been believed to have cleansing or protective properties, purifying the pathways she traversed. While ancient texts don't always specify the exact dendrology of divine accessories, the Greeks were very attuned to the symbolic properties of different plants and trees. Historians still argue about the earliest origins of Hecate's association with torches. Was she originally a goddess of the moon, her torches representing moonlight? Or was her role as a light bearer a more general attribute connected to her guidance through all forms of darkness, both literal and metaphorical? Her name has sometimes been linked to Hecatos, an epithet of Apollo meaning the far-shooting, referring to his arrows but also his far-reaching light, suggesting a possible ancient connection or complementary role as a bringer of light, albeit a nocturnal, more mysterious one. As Hecate moves silently through the night, her twin torches held aloft their flames, casting a warm, flickering glow on the path before her. She is more than just a goddess with a convenient light source. She is a beacon of guidance in confusion, a protector against unseen evils, a compassionate guide for lost souls, and a revealer of hidden things. Her light pierces the deepest shadows, offering reassurance and direction to those who navigate the often unsettling mysteries of the ancient Greek night. Her torches are symbols of her power, her wisdom, and her quiet, ever-watchful care. You are now comfortably accustomed to the image of Hecate moving through the ancient Greek night, her twin torches casting a gentle, guiding light on the shadowy paths and crossroads that are her domain. This illumination is not just physical, it's a symbol of her power to reveal, to protect, and to guide. But Hecate's nightly duties extend beyond merely lighting the way. She is also a profound guardian of the night's deeper mysteries, a goddess intimately connected with the subtle arts of magic, the hidden properties of herbs, the cycles of the moon, and the often unseen world of spirits and ghosts that stirred when the sun had set. She presides with a quiet authority over the veil of night and the gentle, often misunderstood hum of its inherent magic. As darkness enfolds the land, the ancient Greeks believed that the world changed. The familiar boundaries of waking reality became more porous, and the influence of the supernatural, the spiritual, and the magical grew stronger. Hecate, as a chthonic deity with ancient roots and powers that even Zeus respected, was a natural overseer of this nocturnal realm. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate was widely associated in ancient Greek religion with magic, magia, witchcraft, pharmakeia, often involving herbs, necromancy, and the spirits of the dead, particularly those who were restless or sought communication with the living. Her presence was often invoked in magical rites and incantations performed at night or at liminal times. However, it's important for our sleepy journey to understand that magic in this ancient context wasn't always the sinister, black-clad sorcery often depicted in later fiction. While Hecate certainly had a fearsome aspect and could be called upon in curses or more dangerous forms of spellcraft, especially as her image evolved over time, her connection to magic also encompassed a deep knowledge of the natural world, particularly the hidden virtues of herbs and plants, and the ability to work with unseen energies for healing, protection, or divination. Her magic was often about understanding and influencing the subtle currents of fate and nature, a skill that required wisdom and respect, not just power. She wasn't necessarily brewing up trouble in a cauldron by default. She might just as likely be ensuring the right herbs were available for a healing poultice or a protective amulet. Think of her less as a Disney villain, and more as a very powerful, very knowledgeable, and slightly intimidating ancient herbalist and spiritual guide who just happened to do her best work after sunset. Her association with the moon is also crucial here. The moon, with its cyclical phases of waxing and waning, its silvery light transforming the landscape into a place of mystery and illusion, was seen as a powerful magical influence. Hecate, as a nocturnal goddess, often depicted with lunar symbolism, sometimes even equated with moon goddesses like Selene or Artemis, in certain aspects drew power from its ethereal glow. Moonlit nights, especially the full moon or the dark of the new moon, which was particularly sacred to her, as we'll see with Hecate's supper, were considered potent times for magical workings, for gathering specific herbs, or for communing with spirits. You can imagine Hecate herself perhaps in a secluded grove or a mountain, clearing her form bathed in moonlight, engaged in some quiet, arcane ritual, her senses attuned to the subtle energies of the night. And then there are the spirits, the ghosts, the restless shades of the departed. The ancient Greeks had a complex relationship with their dead. Ancestors were revered, but the unburied, those who died violently or those who had grievances in life, could become troublesome ghosts haunting the living. Crossroads, being liminal spaces, were often considered places where these spirits congregated. Hecate, as a goddess who could move between worlds, who understood the pathways of the dead, remember her role as Persephone's companion. In the underworld, was seen as a mistress of these spirits. She didn't necessarily command them in a malevolent way, but she had influence over them. She could perhaps appease them, guide them, or protect the living from their unwanted attentions. Her nightly presence at the crossroads might have been in part a quiet tending to these unseen denizens of the dark, ensuring they didn't cause too much disruption to the sleeping mortal world. It's like she was the night manager of the spectral realm, keeping things reasonably orderly. There's a quirky and rather atmospheric tidbit that Hecate was sometimes believed to be accompanied on her nightly rounds not just by her spectral hounds, whom we'll meet soon, but by a retinue of these restless ghosts, the Olympus shape-shifting female demons, or other shadowy beings. The sound of a sudden gust of wind, the rustling of leaves when no breeze was apparent. A strange feeling of being watched in the darkness. These might be interpreted by a lone traveler as signs of Hecate and her otherworldly entourage passing by. It wasn't necessarily a terrifying encounter, more an awe-inspiring one, a reminder that the night was alive with forces beyond ordinary human perception. Did you hear that one Greek might whisper to another on a dark road? Just the wind. Or perhaps Hecate and her fan club are out for a stroll. Best to nod politely and keep walking. Historians still argue about the evolution of Hecate's darker aspects. Was her association with ghosts and necromancy, communicating with the dead, always a core part of her character, or did these elements become more emphasized in later periods, and particularly as Greek society encountered different magical traditions, or as anxieties about witchcraft grew? Some scholars see her earlier portrayals as more universally benevolent, a guardian and bestower of blessings, while later sources, especially from the Roman era and beyond, tend to highlight her role as a powerful, sometimes fearsome goddess of magic and the occult. But for our sleepy journey, as Hecate moves through the quiet night, her torches casting their gentle glow by, let's focus on her role as the serene keeper of these nocturnal mysteries. She understands the hidden language of herbs, the silent pull of the moon, the unseen pathways of spirits. Her magic is the magic of the threshold, the wisdom of the in-between. A quiet power that ensures the veil of night, while full of mystery, is also a place of potential, guidance, protection, and a unique hushed form of enchantment. You're now comfortably enveloped in the serene, moonlit mysteries of Hecate's nocturnal domain, understanding her as a guardian of thresholds, a torchbearer in darkness, and a mistress of the night's subtle magic and unseen spirits. As she makes her quiet rounds, especially through those lonely crossroads and shadowy pathways, Hecate is not always alone. She is often accompanied by a retinue, and her most famous and perhaps most unnerving to mortal companions are her spectral hounds, ghostly dogs that pad silently at her heels. Their forms sometimes barely visible in the gloom, their presence a chilling yet protective extension of the goddess herself. Imagine yourself at that three-way crossroads again, the moon casting long, eerie shadows. Suddenly you might feel a prickling at the back of your neck, a sense that you are not entirely alone. Then perhaps you hear it. Not a loud aggressive barking, but a low, almost inaudible whine or the soft sound of paws on the dusty earth where no visible creature walks. Or maybe you see them a pair, or sometimes a small pack of lean, shadowy dogs, their eyes perhaps glowing with a faint, otherworldly light, moving with a silent, preternatural grace beside their divine mistress. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate was frequently described in ancient Greek literature and depicted in art, though less commonly for the hounds themselves, as being accompanied by dogs, often black dogs or spectral hounds, which were considered sacred to her and acted as her companions, guardians, and possibly messengers or agents in the spirit world. These were no ordinary village curs. Hecate's hounds were often considered to be spirits themselves, perhaps the ghosts of dogs or chthonic entities from the underworld, intrinsically linked to her liminal nature. Their appearance could be unsettling. They might be unnaturally silent, or their barks when heard might sound strange and carry an ominous weight, perhaps only audible to those with a certain sensitivity or those who were about to encounter something out of the ordinary. The ancient Greeks, who generally loved their dogs as companions and hunters, still held a certain awe and sometimes fear for these particular divine canines. You wouldn't just whistle and expect one of Hecate's hounds to come bounding over for a friendly ear scratch and a treat. These were serious, spectral working dogs on duty with their goddess. What was the role of these ghostly hounds? Firstly, they were undoubtedly her protectors and guardians during her nightly journeys. While Hecate herself was a powerful goddess, her domain often involved traversing lonely, desolate places where malevolent spirits or other dangers might lurk. Her hounds would act as her fierce, incorruptible bodyguards, their spectral senses perhaps able to detect threats that even she might not immediately perceive. Their low growls or sudden silent alertness could warn her of approaching danger. It's like having the ultimate divinely powered security detail, but much, much quieter and significantly more intimidating than a couple of burly blokes in dark suits. Secondly, they may have acted as her agents or messengers, particularly in her dealings with the spirit world. Perhaps they thought they could guide lost souls that Hecate encountered or carry messages to and from the underworld. Their ability to move silently between realms like their mistress would make them ideal for such tasks. They might also be seen as a sign of Hecate's imminent arrival, their eerie howls or silent passage heralding her approach to a crossroads, or a sacred site, a warning to mortals to be respectful or to make way. If you heard that specific unsettling bang in the distance, you knew it wasn't just a stray dog. It was a signal that Hecate was near, and you'd best mind your manners and perhaps leave out a small offering just in case. Oh dear, that sounds like Fluffy and Spot Aki. Hecate's prize hell puppies are out for their nightly constitutional. Best not to leave any unattended picnic baskets by the crossroads tonight. There's a quirky little tidbit that the barking or howling of ordinary dogs at night was sometimes interpreted by ancient Greeks as a sign that Hecate and her spectral hounds were passing by, even if unseen by human eyes. Dogs with their keener senses were believed to be able to perceive these otherworldly presences. So, if all the village dogs suddenly started an unholy chorus of barking at 3 in the morning, for no apparent reason, it wasn't just a random canine concert, it was a Hecate alarm. This belief further integrated Hecate into the everyday sounds and experiences of the night. The color of Hecate's hounds is often specified as black, a color frequently associated with the night, the underworld, and chthonic deities in Greek and many other cultures. Black dogs, even in later folklore, often carry an aura of mystery, sometimes seen as psychopomps or guardians of treasure or secret places. Hecate's black hounds fit perfectly within this symbolic tradition. Historians still argue about whether the spectral hounds of Hecate were always envisioned as terrifying, or if they could also have a more neutral or even protective aspect towards those favored by the goddess. While their appearance might be unsettling to the average mortal, for a devotee of Hecate or someone under her specific protection, the sight or sound of her hounds might have been a reassurance, a sign that their guardian goddess was near and watchful. Their silent paws might tread softly beside a lost traveler she was guiding, or their low growls might deter unseen evils from approaching a home she was shielding. So, as Hecate performs her quiet nightly duties illuminated by her twin torches, she is often not entirely alone. Her spectral hounds with their silent paws and watchful eyes are her faithful companions, her guardians, and perhaps her messengers to the unseen world. They add another layer of mystery and quiet power to her presence, padding softly through the darkness at the crossroads of the ancient Greek night. You're now deeply immersed in the ancient Greek night, understanding Hecate's domain over Crossroads, her guiding torches, her spectral hounds, and the subtle magic she wields. You've seen how her presence was particularly potent at those three-way junctions, the Trivium. But how would an ordinary ancient Greek walking those dusty paths as twilight deepened actually sense Hecate's presence? It wasn't always about grand apparitions or divine pronouncements. More often, it was a subtle feeling. A shift in the atmosphere or the observance of certain quiet, respectful signs and tokens left by others that acknowledged her unseen guardianship of these liminal spaces. The crossroads held a certain hush, a palpable sense of the sacred that spoke of Hecate, even when she remained invisible. Imagine yourself approaching such a crossroads as the last light fades. The familiar sounds of the day, the bleating of goats, the distant laughter from a farmhouse, seem to become more muted here. A particular stillness might settle, a feeling that you are stepping out of the ordinary flow of time and into a place that operates by different older rules. This is a mainstream historical understanding. Crossroads in ancient Greek belief were considered liminal zones, places of transition and potential spiritual encounter, often associated with Hecate, and as such they were approached with a degree of caution, respect, and an awareness of their sacred or uncanny nature, especially after dark. It wasn't necessarily a place of overt fear, but one of heightened awareness of treading softly. An ancient Greek might sense Hecate's presence in a sudden, unexplained chill in the air, even on a warm night. Or perhaps in the way shadows seem to deepen and lengthen unnaturally around the intersection. The sudden, inexplicable barking or whining of dogs in the distance, as we've touched upon, was a classic sign that Hecate and her spectral hounds were passing by, their presence perceived by the keener senses of animals, even if humans saw nothing. If your own dog accompanying you on your journey suddenly bristled, whined, or refused to proceed towards the crossroads, you'd take that as a pretty clear indication that something otherworldly was afoot and that Hecate might be near. All right, Argos, if you say the spooky torch lady is just ahead, we'll take the slightly longer, less spiritually charged route around the olive grove. No arguments from me. Other subtle signs might include the rustling of leaves, when there was no discernible breeze, a fleeting scent of unusual herbs or damp earth, not typical of the surroundings, or even a momentary, inexplicable feeling of being watched or accompanied. These weren't necessarily terrifying experiences, but rather quiet acknowledgments from the environment that this was Hecate's domain, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. It was less jump scare and more gentle, supernatural heads up. And as you looked closer, you would almost certainly see the physical tokens of respect left by previous travelers or local inhabitants. At the base of a Hecateion, that shrine pillar to Hecate, or simply placed on a prominent stone at the junction, you might find small, humble offerings. A little pile of carefully selected smooth stones. A simple garland of wildflowers, perhaps woven with specific herbs known to be sacred to her, like lavender, dandelion, or yew. A small, crudely shaped clay offering, perhaps representing a dog or a torch or a key. Another of her symbols as the keeper of gates. These weren't grand sacrifices, they were quiet personal acknowledgments. Little whispers of piety left for the goddess of the threshold. Just leaving this rather nice pebble here for you, Hecate. Hope your dogs are well. Please don't let any particularly malevolent spirits follow me home tonight. Much appreciated. Sometimes you might see traces of food offerings from Hecate's supper, the Deepnon, especially if it was just after the dark of the new moon. Perhaps a few crumbs of a special cake, a scatter of barley grains, or the remnants of a small fish. These would be for Hecate and her retinue of spirits, a way of ensuring their goodwill and averting any potential misfortune. The very act of leaving these offerings and then walking away without looking back was a ritual imbued with a quiet power. There's a quirky little tidbit that suggests travelers might sometimes perform a very simple, almost unconscious ritual upon reaching a Hecatean crossroads, especially if they felt a bit uneasy. They might touch the Hecaton reverently or murmur a quick, almost silent prayer for safe passage, or even just make a subtle gesture of respect like a slight bow of the head. These weren't elaborate ceremonies, but small, ingrained habits, ways of acknowledging the sanctity of the place and the goddess who presided over it. It was like a spiritual check-in before proceeding. Historians still argue about the exact nature of the fear associated with Hecate at Crossroads. Was it a dread of a malevolent goddess or more of a respectful awe deicedemonia for a powerful chthonic deity whose realm bordered on the unknown and the potentially dangerous world of spirits? Her role was often protective, but because she dealt with magic ghosts in the night, she naturally carried an aura of the uncanny. The hush at the crossroads was likely a mixture of respect for her power and a cautious awareness that this was a place where one should tread carefully and mind their spiritual manners. So as Hecate made her quiet nightly rounds, her presence wasn't always announced by dramatic portents. Often it was in the profound stillness of the crossroads, the respectful silence of those who passed through the small, humble tokens left in her honor, and the subtle, almost imperceptible signs that the ordinary world had momentarily touched upon something ancient, powerful, and deeply sacred. The quiet hum of the crossroads was Hecate's signature. You are now deeply attuned to the nocturnal world of ancient Greece, walking in your imagination alongside Hecate, the torch-bearing goddess of thresholds, her silent, spectral hounds padding faithfully by her side. You understand her ancient power, her dominion over the night's mysteries, and her role as a guardian of those liminal spaces where paths diverge and worlds might meet, the crossroads. Given her profound significance, especially at these three-way junctions, it's natural to wonder how ordinary ancient Greeks acknowledged her presence, how they showed their respect, and what small, quiet rituals might have been performed in her honor at these potent, often lonely locations. These weren't grand temple ceremonies with throngs of worshippers. These were more intimate, personal, and often very humble acts of piety and appeasement. As you, a traveler or a local resident, approached a trivium of three-way crossroads, particularly as dusk settled, or under the light of the moon, you would be acutely aware that this was Hecate's sacred space. You might feel a certain frisson, a sense of the numinous, the awareness that you were treading on ground where the veil between the mundane and the magical was thin. This is a mainstream historical fact. Small shrines or altars dedicated to Hecate, known as Hecateia, were commonly erected at three-way crossroads city gates and even outside private homes in ancient Greece. These served as focal points for offerings and prayers, intended to invoke her protection and favor or to appease her and the spirits she accompanied. These Hecateia were not usually elaborate temples. They could be as simple as a rustic wooden pole topped with a mask or three masks facing in different directions, or a small stone pillar sometimes with a niche for offerings. Sometimes a more formal carved triple herma pillar, topped with three heads of Hecate, might be found at more important urban crossroads. Whatever their form, they were a constant visible reminder of Hecate's presence and her dominion over these transitional points. You wouldn't just stride past a Hecateion without a thought. You would approach it with a measure of respect. What kind of offerings would be left at these humble crossroads shrines? They weren't typically lavish animal sacrifices like those performed for the great Olympian gods. Hecate, in this context, often received simpler, more personal, and sometimes rather specific types of offerings. Food was common, particularly small cakes, honey eggs, fish, especially red mullet or sprats, garlic, and sometimes even the leftovers from a household's meal. These food offerings left at the crossroads, especially on the night of the new moon, the darkest night of the month, constituted a ritual known as Hecate's Supper, or the Deepnon. This monthly offering had a dual purpose. It was to honor Hecate herself, and also to feed and appease the restless spirits, the ghosts of the unburied, or those who died unfortunate deaths who were believed to accompany her on her nightly wanderings. Imagine a family, perhaps, after their evening meal on the last day of the lunar month, carefully gathering the remnants from their table, or specially prepared little cakes, and one member of the household, maybe the mother or an elder, quietly taking these offerings to the nearest three-way crossroads. They would leave the food there at the foot of the Hecateion, or simply on the ground, and then importantly, they would walk away without looking back. To look back was considered unlucky, a sign of disrespect, or perhaps an invitation for the spirits to follow you home. It was a quiet, solemn ritual performed under the cloak of darkness, a way of cleansing the household of any accumulated negativity from the past month, and ensuring Hecate's continued protection and the pacification of the potentially troublesome shades. It's like leaving out a little something for the supernatural sanitation crew, hoping they'll take away the bad vibes along with the crumbs. Besides food, other small tokens might be left: a simple libation of milk or wine poured onto the earth, a garland of wildflowers, a few strands of wool, or perhaps a tiny crudely made clay figurine. The value of the offering was less important than the sincerity and respect with which it was given. These were acts of everyday piety woven into the fabric of domestic and communal life. There's a quirky little tidbit that dogs, particularly black female dogs, were considered especially sacred to Hecate and were sometimes sacrificed to her in more formal or chthonic rituals, though this is a darker aspect we are generally sidestepping for our sleepy journey. However, in the context of everyday offerings at Crossroads, it's more likely that people might leave out scraps of food specifically for Hecate's spectral hounds, or perhaps even for the poor, hungry living dogs of the neighborhood, who were in a way seen as earthly representatives or reminders of Hecate's canine companions. So that bowl of leftovers at the Crossroads might not just be for ghosts. It might also be a much appreciated late-night snack for the local stray dog population, who in turn by their barking might alert you to Hecate's passing. A full-circle canine courtesy system. Historians still argue about the precise social strata of those who most actively participated in these Crossroads rituals for Hecate. While she was honored by all levels of society to some extent, were these small, regular offerings more characteristic of common folk, of women managing household purity, or of those who felt particularly vulnerable to spirits or misfortune? Or did even the elite discreetly participate in these ancient customs to ensure the well-being of their grander households? The evidence suggests her cult was widespread and adaptable, appealing to a broad range of needs and anxieties. So as you stand at that ancient crossroads in the quiet hush of the Greek night, you understand that it is not an empty or forsaken place. It is a place of potent connection. A place where mortals could, through simple, respectful signs and humble offerings, acknowledge the presence of Hecate, the gentle guardian of their thresholds, and seek her unseen protection as they navigated the pathways of their lives, both literal and metaphorical. The quiet ritual at the Crossroads was a soft hum in the nightly symphony of ancient Greek spirituality. You've now witnessed the quiet, almost solemn ritual of Hecate's supper. The Depnon, where ancient Greeks left humble offerings of food at the three-way crossroads on the dark of the new moon. This act wasn't just about feeding a goddess or her spectral hounds. It was a profound gesture of appeasement, purification, and a recognition of Hecate's power over the liminal spaces and the restless spirits that might wander there. But Hecate's influence, her quiet nightly duties, didn't just remain at those lonely outdoor intersections. Her protective aura, her ability to avert evil, was believed to extend even into the sanctity of the home, making her an unseen yet vital shield-bearer for the household. While gods like Hestia presided over the hearth itself and household Lars or agathoi daimones, good spirits offered general domestic protection. Hecate's role was often focused on the thresholds, the doorways, and the prevention of malevolent influences from entering the home in the first place. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate was widely invoked as an apotropaic deity, meaning she had the power to avert evil or bad luck. And her shrines or symbols were often placed at city gates and the entrances to private houses to protect the inhabitants from harmful spirits or unwelcome magical influences. She was in essence the divine bouncer at the door of your domus, deciding who and what got past the velvet rope of your threshold. Imagine an ancient Greek homeowner, perhaps feeling a sense of unease, a run of bad luck, or just a general desire for spiritual security. They might make a specific prayer to Hecate, asking her to extend her watchful gaze over their dwelling. Small shrines or symbols dedicated to her, perhaps a miniature Hecateion, her triple-formed statue or pillar, or simply a specific arrangement of stones or herbs known to be sacred to her, might be placed near the main doorway. These weren't necessarily for elaborate worship, but more as a constant quiet reminder of her presence and a focal point for her protective energies. It's like having a divine security system installed, but one that runs on respect and the occasional offering of garlic rather than Wi-Fi and a monthly subscription. Her association with dogs also played a role here. We've met her spectral hounds, but ordinary household dogs were also seen as being under her general protection, or at least as being particularly sensitive to her presence and the approach of spirits. A dog barking suddenly at the doorway at night might not just be an errant nocturnal disturbance. It could be your furry alarm system alerting you and Hecate to some unseen entity attempting to cross the threshold. "Good boy, Cerberus Jr., you might mutter. You tell those pesky poltergeists who's boss." Hecate will be along shortly with the spiritual eviction notice. Hecate's connection to purification was also vital for the home. The offerings of Hecate's supper at the Crossroads, often made from the sweepings and leftover food of the household, after a ritual cleansing served to carry away any accumulated negativity, any spiritual grime from the past month. By disposing of these scapegoat offerings at her sacred liminal space, the household was metaphorically cleansed and renewed under her auspices. She helped to maintain not just physical boundaries, but also spiritual and ritual purity within the domestic sphere. There's a quirky little tidbit that suggests Hecate's protective influence might have been particularly sought after for homes that were considered a bit drafty in the supernatural sense. Perhaps a house built near an old burial ground, or one reputed to have a resident, if generally harmless, family ghost. In such cases, small specific offerings to Hecate at the doorway or the quiet recitation of her epithets might be performed more regularly to ensure any unseen borders remained respectfully uncrossed by unwelcome visitors from the other side. It was less ghost-busting and more respectful spiritual boundary negotiation with Hecate as the divine mediator. Her role as a light bearer with her twin torches also extended to the protection of the home. Lamps left burning at doorways or in windows at night, while practical for illumination, could also carry a symbolic invocation of Hecate's protective light, a beacon to ward off the shadows and anything they might conceal. This light was a shield pushing back the oppressive darkness and the fears it could breed. Historians still argue about the degree to which Hecate was seen as an actively nurturing household goddess, in the same vein as Hestia, versus a more formidable, somewhat distant, but ultimately benevolent guardian, whose power was best respected and occasionally appeased from the threshold. Her primary interactions with the household often seemed to be at its edges, its entrances and exits, rather than deep within its hearth-centered core. She was the guardian at the gate, the clearer of spiritual pathways, the one who ensured that what was outside stayed outside unless expressly and safely invited in. So, as the ancient Greek family settled down for the night, within their home, the doors barred, the lamps perhaps burning low. They could take some comfort in the thought that Hecate, the unseen shield-bearer, was out there in the quiet darkness, her torches illuminating the thresholds, her spectral hounds at her side, her ancient power keeping watch over the vulnerable boundaries of their small, sleeping world. Her nightly duties were not just for lonely Crossroads, but for every home that sought her silent, steadfast protection. You are now deeply ensconced in the quiet, moonlit world of Hecate, understanding her role as a guardian of thresholds, a clearer of spiritual pathways, and an unseen shield-bearer for the ancient Greek home. Her torches not only illuminate the physical darkness, but also offer a metaphorical light to navigate the obscurities of life. And this guidance becomes particularly poignant when we consider her role with those who are lost, not just physically on a dark road, but metaphorically at a crossroads in their own lives, facing difficult choices or uncertain futures. Hecate, the goddess of the three ways, was also in her own subtle manner a deity who could offer gentle, unseen guidance to these lost and searching souls. Imagine an ancient Greek, perhaps a young person facing a momentous decision. Which trade to learn, whom to marry, whether to embark on a dangerous sea voyage. Or perhaps someone older grappling with lost confusion or a path that has grown dim before them. In such moments of profound uncertainty, when the way forward is unclear, they might find themselves drawn either literally or in their thoughts to a Hecatean crossroads. This is a less emphasized but logical extension of her domain. Hecate as the goddess who presides over choices and diverging paths. The very essence of a crossroads would naturally be a deity to invoke, even if only silently, when seeking clarity or direction in life's more challenging junctures. This guidance wouldn't necessarily come in the form of a booming oracle or a dramatic divine intervention. Hecate's way was often quieter, more intuitive. Perhaps the individual, after spending time in quiet contemplation at her shrine, or after making a small offering, would find a sense of inner clarity, a subtle shift in perspective that allowed them to see their options always more clearly. Or maybe they would experience a significant dream, one that felt different from ordinary nightly phantoms. A dream where a figure, perhaps Morpheus on Hecate's subtle cue, offered a piece of enigmatic but resonant advice. Hecate's guidance was often about illuminating the choices, not necessarily making the choice for you. She empowered you to see your own path. Her torches in this context become symbols of inner illumination, the light of wisdom that can pierce the fog of confusion. Just as they guide travelers through the physical night, they can also guide the soul through periods of spiritual darkness or indecision. A prayer to Hecate might be a plea for her to light up the obscure corners of a problem to reveal hidden factors, or to simply grant the courage to choose a path and walk it with conviction. She wasn't there to give you a detailed step-by-step life plan with guaranteed outcomes. The Greek gods rarely offered such easy certainties. But she could help you find your own footing on an uncertain road. She was less of a GPS, more of a really good divinely inspired compass that pointed towards your truest north if you were quiet enough to read its signs. This role as a guide for lost souls also extended quite literally to her duties as a psychopomp, a conductor of the dead. We've touched upon her accompanying Persephone in the underworld. This suggests she was familiar with the pathways between the realms of the living and the dead, a journey that is in itself the ultimate crossroads, for the dying or for the souls of those recently departed. Who might be confused or lingering, Hecate's presence, her torchlight, could offer a gentle, steadying guidance towards whatever awaited them. This aspect, while perhaps somber, is not necessarily terrifying. It can also be seen as a compassionate service ensuring a peaceful transition. It's like being the cosmic equivalent of a very serene and understanding hospice worker ensuring no soul gets truly lost in the ultimate darkness. There's a quirky little tidbit that suggests Hecate's guidance might sometimes come in unexpected, almost synchronistic forms. Perhaps someone at a crossroads in their life after a quiet prayer to her might suddenly notice the flight of a particular bird, or overhear a chance remark from a stranger, or even find a strangely shaped stone on the path that seems to offer a tiny symbolic clue, a nudge in a particular direction. These wouldn't be grand miracles, but subtle affirmations, moments where the mundane world seems to whisper a secret, all under Hecate's unseen influence. It's the universe's way of leaving little breadcrumbs for you, with Hecate perhaps pointing out where to look. Historians still argue about how actively individual Greeks sought out Hecate for this kind of personal life path guidance, especially compared to consulting major oracles like Delphi for more direct prophecy. Her role as a guide in such matters was likely more personal, more intuitive, perhaps sought by individuals in quieter, less public ways. While Apollo might offer pronouncements from his temple, Hecate might offer a gut feeling, a sudden insight, a dream that clarified. Her guidance was often woven into the fabric of choices made at literal and metaphorical crossroads. So, as Hecate makes her nightly rounds, her torches not only light the physical paths, but also offer a more subtle illumination for those who are metaphorically in the dark. She is the quiet confidant of the uncertain heart, the unseen guide for the lost soul, the gentle presence that reminds us that even in moments of profound confusion or at the most daunting of life's intersections, there is always a light, however faint, to help us find our way. Her silent duties at the crossroads extend to the very crossroads of human experience itself. You've now accompanied Hecate on her quiet nightly rounds, seeing her as a Titan's daughter, a keeper of thresholds, a torch-bearing guide, a mistress of gentle magic and spirits, and a comforter of lost souls at life's crossroads. These are all ancient, deeply embedded aspects of her character, painting a picture of a powerful, multifaceted, and often benevolent, if somewhat enigmatic goddess. However, as time went on, particularly in later classical antiquity and into the Roman era and beyond, certain aspects of Hecate became more heavily emphasized, sometimes overshadowing her broader, calmer roles. She became increasingly associated with witchcraft, ghosts, necromancy, and the more frightening, darker sides of magic, eventually leading to her popular image as a queen of witches, or a crone-like figure of dread. For our sleepy journey towards understanding her quiet nightly duties, it's important to look beyond this later, often sensationalized shadow and rediscover the wider scope of her original divine portfolio. It's true that Hecate always had a connection to magic, the underworld, and spirits. Her chthonic nature, her ability to move between worlds, and her association with the night made this inevitable. This is a mainstream historical fact. While Hecate was indeed associated with magic, ghosts, and the night from early periods, her portrayal as a leading figure of witchcraft and dark arts became more pronounced in later Greek and Roman literature and popular imagination, sometimes overshadowing her earlier, more multifaceted roles as a bestower of blessings, a guardian, and a Karatrophos child nurturer. This later emphasis has significantly shaped her modern perception. However, in earlier Greek thought, particularly in Hesiod's Theogony, our earliest detailed account of her Hecate is presented as a goddess greatly honored by Zeus, who grants mortals who pray to her successes in a wide range of endeavors, in assemblies and war, in athletic contests, in herding and fishing. She is a bestower of wealth and good fortune, a protector of the young. There is little in Hesiod's description to suggest a primarily malevolent or terrifying figure. She is powerful, yes, and her domain includes the unseen, but her influence is largely positive for those who show her due respect. It's like having a very influential, slightly mysterious great aunt who can pull strings in all sorts of unexpected places to help you out, as long as you remember to send her a nice card on her festival days. So what happened to shift the emphasis? Several factors likely contributed. As Greek society evolved, and as it encountered other cultures with their own magical traditions, like those from Egypt or Persia, ideas about magic itself became more complex and sometimes more suspect. Deities associated with magic could then become focal points for both fascination and fear. Hecate, with her existing links to the night spirits and potent herbs, was a natural candidate to become a more prominent figure in the world of pharmakia. The use of drugs and herbs, which could encompass both healing medicine and harmful poisons, or magical potions in Gotia sorcery or necromancy. Literary portrayals also played a significant role. Playwrights like Euripides and Sophocles, and later poets like Apollonius of Rhodes in his Argonautica, where Medea, a powerful sorceress, is a priestess of Hecate, began to explore and emphasize Hecate's connection to the more dramatic and sometimes frightening aspects of magic and the supernatural. These powerful literary images had a lasting impact on how she was perceived. It's a bit like how a single iconic movie role can forever define an actor in the public's mind, even if their broader career was much more varied. Hecate got typecast to some extent as the spooky goddess. There's a quirky little tidbit that in some very localized cults, Hecate might have been worshipped with surprisingly different emphases. For instance, in some coastal areas, she retained aspects of a sea goddess, a bestower of bounty, from the ocean, echoing Hesiod's mention of her helping fishermen. In other regions, her role as a protector of gateways and households remained paramount, with little overt connection to dark magic. This suggests her character was more fluid and regionally diverse than some of the later, more standardized literary portrayals might suggest. She was a goddess of many hats, or rather, many torches and many paths. It's also important to remember that the ancient Greek world didn't always have the same rigid distinction between good magic and bad magic, or white witches and black witches that developed out in later European thought. Magic was a power of force, and Hecate was a deity who understood and wielded such forces. Whether that power was used for beneficial purposes like healing, protection, or divination, or for more harmful ones, often depended on the intent of the practitioner who invoked her, or the specific context of the myth or ritual. She was a goddess of potent knowledge, and knowledge, as we know, can be a double-edged sword, or in her case, perhaps a double-flamed torch. Historians still argue about when and why Hecate's image began to predominantly shift towards that of a queen of witches, and how much of this was an internal Greek development versus an influence from Roman interpretations or later medieval and Renaissance folklore, which further sensationalized her. The figure of the crone goddess associated with magic and the waning moon is an archetype found in many cultures, and Hecate, with her triple form, sometimes seen as maiden mother crone, easily assimilated these aspects. But for our sleepy contemplation of her quiet nightly duties, it's useful to gently peel back these later, more dramatic layers. Before she was the go-to goddess for Shakespeare's witches in Macbeth, she was Hesiod's respected titaness honored by Zeus, a guardian of ways, a light in darkness, a helper of mortals in many spheres of life. Her connection to the night and its mysteries was always there, but It wasn't necessarily always about brewing sinister potions or leading a chorus of baying hellhounds in pursuit of the damned. It could also be about the quiet wisdom of herbs, the gentle guidance of spirits, and the serene, watchful peace of the moonlit crossroads. You've now journeyed with Hecate beyond her later, more sensationalized image as a queen of witches, rediscovering her ancient roots as a widely honored goddess, a Titan's daughter respected by Zeus, a guardian of thresholds and a light bearer in the darkness. Her connection to magic and the spirit world was always profound, but not always sinister. And as we delve further into the quieter, often overlooked aspects of her divine portfolio, we find another surprising and deeply compassionate role: Hecate as a protector of women in childbirth, a Chorotrophos child nurturer, and a guardian of the sacred liminal passage of birth itself. This aspect might seem at odds with her more chthonic or magical associations. But for the ancient Greeks, birth, like death, was a profound threshold. A moment when the veil between worlds was thin, and thus a time when Hecate's particular powers were most needed. While goddesses like Artemis for aid in delivery and Hera as goddess of marriage and childbirth had primary roles in this domain, Hecate often played a vital, if sometimes more subtle, supporting part. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hecate, in addition to her better-known roles, was invoked in ancient Greece as a Chorotrophos nurturer of the young, and a goddess who could offer protection and assistance during childbirth, a perilous and liminal event where her powers to avert evil and guide through transitions were highly valued. Her presence was sought to ensure a safe passage for both mother and child from one state of being to another. Imagine a household in ancient Greece where a woman is in labor. It's a time of intense anxiety and hope. The midwife is present perhaps, and female relatives offer support. But beyond the human, assistance prayers would be directed to the divine. And Hecate, as a goddess who understood thresholds, who could move between worlds, and who had the power to ward off malevolent spirits or ill luck that might threaten the mother or newborn, would be a natural deity to call upon. Her torches, usually associated with guiding souls in darkness or illuminating pathways, could here symbolize the bringing of new life into the light, or protecting that fragile new light from being extinguished. She was literally lighting the way for a new soul to enter the world. It's a far cry from stirring a cauldron, more like being the divine doula with a really effective nightlight. Her association with purification was also relevant here. Childbirth, while a joyous event, was also considered ritually impure in some ancient contexts, requiring cleansing ceremonies for the mother, child, and household afterwards. Hecate, with her power over purification and her ability to drive away harmful influences. Miasma could be invoked to ensure this spiritual cleansing was effective, restoring the household to a state of ritual purity and protecting the newborn from any lingering negativity. The offerings made at Hecate's supper at the Crossroads, which often included household sweeping, served a similar function of carrying away impurities, and this monthly ritual would have had ongoing benefits for the spiritual health of the family, including new mothers and infants. There's a quirky little tidbit that small dedicated shrines to Hecate, or symbols representing her like keys or images of dogs or torches, might sometimes be found not just at the main doorway of a house, but perhaps also discreetly placed near the birthing room or the cradle of a newborn as an extra layer of apotropaic protection during those vulnerable early days. It wasn't about grand public worship, but about quiet personal acts of piety, seeking the goddess's gentle unseen shield for the newest and most fragile members of the household. Just a little extra Hecate-approved warding for young Timon here. Wouldn't want any grumpy sprites mistaking his nursery for a public thoroughfare. This role as a Chorotrophos, a nurturer and protector of the young, also extended beyond the immediate moment of birth. Hecate was sometimes seen as a guardian of children in general, particularly as they navigated the various thresholds of childhood. Her oversight of pathways and crossroads could be metaphorically extended to the journey of life itself, especially its vulnerable early stages. She was a goddess who helped things to come into being and then watched over them as they grew. Historians still argue about how central or widespread Hecate's role in childbirth was compared to other goddesses more explicitly focused on fertility and birth, like Artemis Eileithyia. Was Hecate called upon in all births, or primarily in difficult or dangerous ones, where her particular power to avert evil and navigate crises was most needed? Her chthonic associations, her connection to the spirit world might have made her a particularly potent ally when the life of the mother or child seemed to be hovering on the brink at that ultimate threshold between life and death. This aspect of Hecate as a gentle guardian of new life adds another layer of depth and compassion to her often enigmatic character. It reminds us that her dominion over boundaries was not just about physical roads or mystical realms, but also about the most profound human transitions. As she performed her quiet nightly duties, her watchful gaze was not only on the lonely traveler at the crossroads, or the spirits flitting through the darkness, but also perhaps on the hushed birthing room where a new soul was preparing to cross the threshold into the world, her torches offering a promise of safe passage, and her ancient power a shield against the shadows. You've now seen Hecate in her compassionate, if lesser-known role as a guardian of childbirth, her torches lighting the way for new souls, and her power shielding the vulnerable. This nurturing aspect, this connection to life's profound transitions, seems a world away from the later, more fearsome images of her as a queen of witches. And as we continue to explore the quieter, more ancient facets of her nightly duties, we find another domain where her presence would be deeply felt: the realm of plants, herbs, and the subtle moonlit wisdom of the natural world. Hecate, with her chthonic connections and her understanding of hidden powers, was often considered a mistress of potent herbs and pharmacological lore, perhaps even tending her own mythical, magical garden where she gathered ingredients for her benevolent or sometimes more ambiguous purposes. Imagine a still moonlit night in ancient Greece. The air is cool, fragrant with the scents of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. While most mortals sleep, Hecate might be found in a secluded grove or perhaps in a hidden garden, her form illuminated by the silvery lunar glow or the gentle light of her own torches. Here she moves with a quiet, knowing grace, her fingers brushing against the leaves of various plants, discerning their hidden properties, their virtues, their potential for healing, for magic, or for ushering in altered states of consciousness. This is a mainstream historical concept. Hecate was strongly associated in Greek mythology and cult practice with pharmakeia, the knowledge and use of drugs and herbs which could encompass both beneficial medicines and potent magical or poisonous concoctions. She was often invoked by those who gathered herbs for such purposes. This herbal wisdom was a significant part of ancient magical and medicinal practice. The Greeks, like many ancient cultures, had an extensive pharmacopoeia derived from plants. They understood that certain herbs could soothe pain, induce sleep, heal wounds, or conversely cause illness, create illusions, or even bring about death. Hecate, as a goddess who straddled the worlds, who understood the seen and unseen forces of nature, would have been a natural patroness of this potent and sometimes dangerous knowledge. She knew which plants bloomed only under the dark of the moon, which roots held the deepest power when gathered with specific incantations, which leaves needed to be dried in shadow rather than sun. Her garden wasn't just for pretty flowers, it was a living library of botanical power. Perhaps she had a particularly well-organized filing system for her more interesting varietals. Nightshade Aisle 3 next to the slightly judgmental-looking mandrakes. Do not mix them up with the parsley again. This connection to herbs also links Hecate to her role as a goddess of magic and spells. Many magical rites in the ancient world involved the use of specific plants' incense or potions. Someone seeking to perform a ritual, perhaps for protection, for love, for divination, or for less benevolent purposes, might invoke Hecate's aid and utilize herbs believed to be sacred to her or potent under her influence. Her presence was sought to consecrate these ingredients, to imbue them with magical efficacy. The gathering of these herbs often took place at specific times, usually at night, under particular phases of the moon, and sometimes at liminal locations like crossroads or graveyards, all places within Hecate's domain. You can picture a lone figure, perhaps a pharmakeis, a female herbalist or magic user, or a rhizotomos, a root cutter, one who gathered medicinal roots moving silently through a moonlit landscape, a basket in hand carefully selecting plants, perhaps whispering incantations or prayers to Hecate as they do so. They are in a sense borrowing from Hecate's own divine garden, tapping into her profound botanical knowledge. There's a quirky little tidbit that certain plants were considered so powerfully connected to Hecate that they were almost her living embodiments. These might include plants known for their psychoactive or poisonous properties like aconite wolfsbane, belladonna, deadly nightshade mandrake or yew, but also perhaps more benignly herbs like dandelion garlic, often used in her offerings, lavender, or dittany of Crete, known for its healing properties, might have been associated with her. Her garden was likely a very diverse and probably very carefully labeled collection. One wouldn't want to accidentally put wolfsbane in the healing tea after all. This one for restful sleep, this one for, well, let's just say permanent rest if you're not careful. Read the labels, mortals read the labels. Historians still argue about the precise nature of Hecate's magical garden. Was it conceived as a literal physical place in some mythical realm, or more as a metaphor for her dominion over all potent and transformative plants? Wherever they grew, and how much of her herbal lore was focused on healing and protection, versus more ambiguous or harmful applications. Early sources like Hesiod don't emphasize this botanical aspect as much as later writers, suggesting her role as a goddess of herbs and magic became more prominent over time, perhaps absorbing attributes from other local deities or evolving with Greek understanding of pharmacology and magic. But as Hecate performs her quiet nightly duties moving through the moon-drenched landscapes, her knowledge of the Earth's hidden vegetative powers is an undeniable part of her essence. She is not just a guardian of ways, but a keeper of ancient botanical secrets, a goddess who understands the silent, potent language of plants. Her wisdom is rooted in the very soil and the cycles of growth and decay, and in the mysterious energies that flow through the green, living veins of the world, most keenly felt under the quiet, watchful gaze of the moon. You have journeyed with Hecate through many facets of her nocturnal domain, from her ancient Titan lineage and her guardianship of thresholds to her torchlit guidance of souls, her mastery of gentle magic and moonlit herbs, and her surprising role as a protector in childbirth. You've seen her receive humble suppers at the Crossroads and met her spectral hounds. Through all these varied duties and attributes, one constant remains: her profound connection to the night and her role as a serene, often unseen guardian who ensures the peaceful passage of those dark hours until the dawn. As the ancient Greek world slumbers, Hecate keeps her quiet watch. Imagine the landscape of ancient Greece now fully enveloped in the deepest part of the night. The moon, perhaps a slender crescent or a waning sliver, casts a pale, ethereal light. Or maybe it's a moonless star-dusted darkness. The villages are silent. The farmsteads shuttered, the great stone cities hushed, save for the occasional cry of a night watchman, or the distant barking of a dog, perhaps sensing Hecate's very passage. This is the time when the world of mortals is at its most vulnerable, when anxieties can loom large in the quiet, and when the barrier between the seen and unseen seems thinnest. And it is during these hours that Hecate's presence, however subtle, would offer a profound, if often unconscious, sense of reassurance. This is an implied role building on her apotropaic and guardian functions. Hecate, as a powerful nocturnal deity with oversight of spirits and boundaries, inherently contributes to the perceived safety and order of the night for those who respect her domain. Her quiet watch is not necessarily about actively patrolling every darkened lane or personally tucking every Greek child into their reed mats. She wasn't the ancient Greek equivalent of a divine nanny cam. Rather, her power, her very essence as a goddess of the night, and its thresholds created a kind of spiritual framework, an understanding that even in the deepest darkness, there was a divine order, a watchful presence. Knowing that Hecate presided over these hours, that she understood the ways of spirits and held keys to hidden pathways, could bring a measure of peace to the sleeping human mind. Her torches, as we've seen, are a key element of this. Even if not physically visible in every corner of the land, the idea of her, like her ability to pierce the gloom, served as a comfort. It was a reminder that darkness was not absolute, that guidance was available even in the most disorienting of circumstances. Her light was a symbol of hope, of safe passage through the night's uncertainties. When you're feeling a bit lost in the dark, metaphorical, or otherwise just knowing there's a cosmic entity out there with a really good flashlight and a reputation for knowing all the shortcuts, can be surprisingly calming. Her role as a guardian of gates and doorways also contributed to this sense of nocturnal peace. Every home, every city had its thresholds, its vulnerable points of entry. Hecate's oversight of these boundaries meant that there was a divine sentinel posted against unwelcome intrusions, be they physical or spiritual. The offerings left for her, the small shrines at entrances, were all part of maintaining this protective ward. It was a partnership. Mortals showed their respect, and Hecate in turn extended her unseen shield. It's like having the best celestial neighborhood watch program where the captain has 3 heads and really good torches. Even her association with the spirit world, while potentially unsettling, also had a reassuring aspect to it. If Hecate was the mistress of ghosts, if she understood their ways and could appease them, as with the Deipnon offerings, then mortals didn't have to face these spectral anxieties entirely alone. There was a powerful deity who could mediate, who could keep the more restless shades in check, ensuring they didn't unduly trouble the living. Her presence brought a kind of order to the often chaotic interactions between the worlds of the living and the dead. There's a quirky little tidbit that suggests the very silence of the deep night for the ancient Greeks might not have been empty, but rather filled with the subtle activities of Hecate and her retinue. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of a night breeze, the distant creak of a tree. These could all be interpreted as signs of her passage, her quiet tending to the world while mortals slept. It wasn't an absence of sound that defined her watch, but a different kind of sound, the hushed symphony of the nocturnal world she governed. She was the conductor of the night's quiet orchestra. Historians still argue about how much the average Greek peasant farmer or artisan consciously thought about Hecate on a nightly basis, versus her being a deity invoked more specifically at times of crisis transition, or during her particular monthly rituals. Her presence was perhaps more like the steady, often unnoticed rhythm of the moon and stars. Always there, a fundamental part of the night's fabric, influencing the world in subtle ways, even if not always at the forefront of conscious thought, until a specific need or moment brought her into sharper focus. But as the hours of darkness wore on, as the ancient world lay sleeping under the vast, indifferent gaze of the cosmos, Hecate's quiet vigil continued. She was the unseen benefactor, the silent guardian of the night's passage, ensuring that its mysteries remained, for the most part, gentle, and that its shadows eventually and always gave way to the first hopeful light of dawn. Her calm watch was a promise of renewal, a quiet assurance that even the deepest night would not last forever. You have journeyed with Hecate through the deepest hours of the ancient Greek night, witnessing her quiet vigil, her subtle guardianship of thresholds, her mastery of moonlit herbs, and her compassionate guidance of souls, both new and departed. From her ancient Titan lineage to her specific duties at the three-way crossroads, you've come to know her not just as a figure of magic and mystery, but as a profound, often benevolent, and deeply respected deity whose influence permeated the nocturnal life of ancient Greece. As the first faint hints of dawn begin to touch the eastern sky, and our sleepy exploration of Hecate's quiet nightly duties draws to its close, let us reflect on the enduring spirit of this enigmatic goddess and the timeless peace that can still be found in contemplating her liminal realm. Hecate's legacy is a complex one. Over centuries, her image has shifted and transformed, sometimes being simplified into a mere witch goddess or a fearsome haunter of the dark. But as we've seen, her original character, particularly in earlier Greek understanding, was far richer and more multifaceted. She was a bestower of blessings, a protector, a guide, a kuratrophos, a mistress of herbal wisdom, and a deity uniquely honored by Zeus himself. This is a mainstream historical understanding. While Hecate's associations with witchcraft became prominent in later periods, her earlier cults and mythological portrayals reveal a more complex and often benevolent goddess with wide-ranging powers, connected to transitions, protection, prosperity, and the mysteries of life, death, and nature. The essence of Hecate perhaps lies in her profound connection to boundaries, to the in-between spaces and times, the crossroads, the doorway, the moment of birth, the passage of death, the transition from day to night and night to day, the dark of the new moon. These are all Hecatean realms. And in these liminal zones, she offers not just power, but a certain kind of calm, the quiet that comes from acknowledging and respecting the mysteries that lie just beyond our everyday perception. Her nightly duties were about maintaining a kind of sacred order within these transitional spaces, ensuring that the passages remained open, but also protected. Even today, the idea of Hecate, or the archetypal energy she represents, continues to resonate. People are still drawn to her as a figure of feminine power, intuitive wisdom, and a connection to the deeper, often unseen currents of life and magic. The modern pagan and Wiccan movements often honor Hecate as a key deity, recognizing her ancient roles and reinterpreting them for contemporary spiritual practice. She remains a goddess for those who walk their own unique paths, who seek guidance at personal crossroads, or who feel a kinship with the quiet magic of the night and the natural world. It seems her torches still offer a guiding light for many, You might even find small modern offerings left for her at Crossroads. In some parts of the world, a quiet echo of those ancient Dipna. It's like she's still on duty, her ancient contract renewed by new generations of seekers. There's a quirky little thought that Hecate, with her ability to see in all directions, especially in her triple form and her association with keys, could be seen as a very ancient patron saint of locksmiths.